Talking about this, GE confirming just now it is cutting 12,000 jobs as it shrinks its power. You're already seeing it, aren't you? It's already starting to impact your business very much so. But he also just made an announcement of an expansion of the existing 25% tariffs that were imposed on steel. Those will now be doubling, according to the president. Just now, I want to bring in a move that has shocked the American industrial landscape. General Electric has announced it will shut down several US factories and move production overseas. Coming from one of the most iconic manufacturing giants in US history, this decision marks a turning point in the nation's economic narrative. At the center of this shakeup is President Trump's aggressive tariff policy, which aims to protect American industry, but now faces unexpected consequences as trade tensions escalate. G's retreat raises urgent questions about the actual cost of music protectionism. Is this a sign of strategic adaptation in a globalized economy, or the beginning of a broader unraveling of US industrial power? The announcement by General Electric to close multiple manufacturing plants across the Midwest and Northeast has sent a deep tremor through America's industrial heartland. These facilities were not just centers of production, they stood as symbols of American innovation, strength, and middle-class prosperity for decades. With machines powered down and assembly lines falling silent, thousands of workers face an uncertain future. The company's decision to move operations abroad signals more than a business adjustment. It reflects a seismic realignment of supply chains that no longer consider the United States a competitive production base under current conditions. Once synonymous with American manufacturing excellence, General Electric is shifting significant parts of its operations to Mexico, Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia. These regions offer lower labor costs and more favorable tariff structures in the current global trade environment. The company has made clear that this is not a temporary relocation. This long-term strategy aims to redesign its supply network to withstand political instability, trade disputes, and rising domestic production expenses. While cost efficiency is a clear driver, the scale and permanence of this shift suggest deeper structural concerns. GE executives have indicated that the current US industrial climate makes it nearly impossible to maintain competitive pricing. As countries worldwide offer aggressive incentives and tax shelters to attract manufacturing investments, American factories are increasingly left behind. As a result, GE is prioritizing geographic regions that promise flexibility, cost control, and streamlined logistics. The company's move also reflects a changing calculation in the global economy. The days when industrial powerhouses needed to centralize production within one country have ended. Multinational corporations now favor decentralized models, where production is closer to raw materials, labor markets, and end users. GE's restructuring shows how even iconic American firms must respond to global forces that outweigh traditional patriotic or political considerations. Critically, this shift is part of a broader pattern. Over the last 5 years, many companies have quietly relocated manufacturing hubs to countries with fewer regulatory hurdles and lower operational costs. However, GE's decision stands out due to its size, legacy, and symbolic weight. It signals to other corporations that the cost-benefit calculus has reached a tipping point. If even GE cannot sustain its industrial footprint in the United States, smaller firms may find it even more challenging to survive. The move has also ignited concerns among local communities that depended heavily on GE facilities. Towns built around these plants are bracing for job losses, declining tax revenue, and weakening local economies. Mayors and state officials are scrambling to propose tax incentives or reskilling programs to prevent economic collapse. But many recognize that these efforts may be too little, too late. Beyond economic disruption, the psychological impact on American identity is profound. General Electric has long been part of the national story. Its factories represented more than jobs. They were pillars of dignity, discipline, and stability. The closure of these plants is a symbolic fracture in the belief that American industry, once lost, can be restored through policy slogans or political will. This moment also brings into focus the global competition for manufacturing dominance. As GE packs up its equipment and begins operations overseas, it hands over technological processes, supply contracts, and regional expertise to foreign partners. These assets do not just represent financial capital, they carry knowledge, systems, and leverage that could shift the balance of economic influence. In the long term, the departure of major manufacturing infrastructure from US soil weakens America's strategic autonomy in sectors deemed vital for national resilience. GE's transition is not just about escaping higher domestic costs, it is about adapting to a world where production must be mobile, scalable, and shielded from policy volatility. As industries evolve under pressure from automation, geopolitics, and shifting consumer markets, firms like GE make decisions that redefine where and how the next generation of goods will be built. For now, the lights in many GE plants are going out, but the questions sparked by this decision are only beginning to surface. Behind closed doors, General Electric spent months exploring every financial and operational strategy that could keep its American factories alive. Company leaders examined multiple pathways to stay rooted on US soil. They considered streamlining production lines, investing in automation, reducing shift hours, and renegotiating labor contracts. Every option was modeled with advanced forecasting tools and tested through detailed cost simulations. These efforts, however, met the same conclusion. None of the internal scenarios offered a viable path to sustain profitability under the current economic climate shaped by global inflation and targeted tariffs. In its cost optimization attempts, GE pursued aggressive automation initiatives. The aim was to reduce dependency on manual labor while increasing production speed. Robotics and innovative factory systems were introduced in test plants, promising greater efficiency. At the same time, management engaged in complex negotiations with labor unions. They proposed contract revisions that included temporary pay freezes, revised health benefits, and longer shift rotations. While some concessions were achieved, they fell short of offsetting the sharp increase in raw material prices and logistics costs. Beyond labor and automation, GE evaluated the consolidation of supply chains and the downsizing of non-core operations. Managers worked through frameworks that analyzed facility-level productivity and maintenance costs. Some smaller plants were proposed for closure, while others were considered for conversion into specialized hubs. However, in every model, the final projection revealed consistent margin erosion. Tariffs on essential inputs like steel and semiconductors made balancing cost and quality expectations nearly impossible. Even proposals to collocate production and research in more tax-friendly states failed to reverse the trajectory. States offering favorable conditions lacked existing infrastructure or required expensive retooling that further stretched capital. Federal tax credits and subsidies for manufacturing were either insufficient or bound by restrictions that did not apply to GE's diversified product portfolio. Even proposals to collocate production and research in more tax-friendly states failed to reverse the trajectory. States offering favorable conditions lacked existing infrastructure or required expensive retooling that further stretched capital. Federal tax credits and subsidies for manufacturing were either insufficient or bound by restrictions that did not apply to GE's diversified product portfolio. While GE has withstood past recessions, market collapses, and even technological disruption, this moment presented a challenge that hit the very foundation of its operating model. The implications of this decision are already visible across the communities built around GE's manufacturing presence. Local governments that once benefited from stable tax revenues and employment now face budget deficits. These regions' hospitals, public schools, and infrastructure programs depend heavily on industrial contributions. As production halts, these services confront immediate funding gaps. Emergency meetings are being held in city councils across affected states to discuss stopgap measures, but most lack the financial depth to absorb such shocks. On the human side, the closures have disrupted thousands of lives. For many families, GE was not just a workplace. It represented generational stability and a pathway to upward mobility. Parents passed down jobs to their children. Communities formed around shift schedules and factory culture. With the closures, that foundation has vanished almost overnight. Laid-off workers now face uncertain futures in regions where comparable opportunities are scarce. Media platforms have begun documenting the collapse in real time. Aerial footage shows deserted parking lots and idle machinery. Interviews with displaced employees reveal the emotional weight of sudden unemployment. Analysts note these losses' psychological toll on communities that identified closely with their industrial role. For many, the economic hit is compounded by a deep sense of identity loss. This collapse also challenges the political narrative that aggressive tariff regimes could achieve reshoring and industrial independence. The global economy will not slow down to accommodate national nostalgia. Other countries are already moving fast to position themselves as manufacturing hubs for the future. They offer targeted incentives, build modern infrastructure, and align education systems with industrial needs. Unless the US implements a coherent and forward-looking industrial strategy, it will continue to lose ground. GE's move should be seen not only as a loss, but also as a signal. It invites a broader discussion about what kind of economy the US wants to build. Is it one that insists on preserving the past or prepares for the future? The answer cannot rely on slogans or punitive trade measures. It must come from realistic, data-driven strategies that align national interest with global opportunity. At this crossroads, the United States has a choice to make. Whether GE's decision becomes the first in a wave or a catalyst for national renewal will depend entirely on how that choice is made.